Hi, let's talk homeschooling. So you're thinking about homeschooling and you're trying to figure out how does this really work? Now I know back in 2020 when there's a pandemic and everybody was forced to homeschool, it just really changed the way homeschooling was, and a lot more people are homeschooling than they ever have. So it's kind of taken up some traction. But if you're starting out and you're trying to figure out how do I homeschool? I've been homeschooling for about 20 plus years. My name is Nancy Marie Peterson, and we've been on this journey for a long time. I have done homeschooling all different kinds of ways. I've done it where we had a nice house and I had a whole room set up. I had a whiteboard and desks and all the things that you would naturally have in a schoolroom. I was a teacher by trade, and so that was a very familiar setting for me, and I thrived in it. And I raised my first first few years of homeschooling is what it looked like. We went by curriculum and we went faithfully through it, and I finished it to the very end, and I was very meticulous, and we did that for many, many years. And then we moved to Mexico to serve with the missions in our organization down here in the Baja, and all of that changed. I no longer had my fancy homeschooling room. I was kind of stuck to squished in an environment trying to homeschool with not a lot of materials that I used to have, and I had to really adjust the way of homeschooling. But the truth is, you don't need all that fancy stuff to homeschool. I learned, shifted, and we had more freedom, and it just really loosened the homeschooling. And I've been homeschooling for the last 10 years. We've been homeschooling in an RV. We lived in an RV for about 10 years where we had to homeschool in an RV, and now that takes it to a whole new level. We had to get really creative, and my kids did before they graduated from high school, they did on the last 2 years of high school, they did online college. And so we had to juggle all those pieces as well in an RV, and still homeschooled the little ones. And I didn't have all the fancy stuff. I bought a fancy microscope, but hardly we used it. And she wanted to go into nursing. And I was like, oh my word, I failed her. I didn't give her those fancy things. And we had friends who were invested in the school district. He was principal and all these things. And I just would hear about all these STEM fancy things. And we didn't do any of that. And I thought, I've doomed my kids, I homeschool and I didn't do well. But in reality, my daughter at 27 is a family nurse practitioner. She's doing amazing. She's doing great. She graduated one of the top of her class. She was a senior speaker, all those things. And without a fancy microscope, she still rose to the top because I taught her how to get information and how to be resourceful. And she would say that was one of the most valuable things of homeschooling is learning how to be resourceful, is how to figure out what you need to figure out. So all my kids have chosen different paths after homeschooling. My fifth child, who is going to graduate this year, 4 of them have already graduated. They've gone on to get university degrees. One has gone on to be a missionary, and he's extended his learning through University of the Nations. I've had one daughter became a teacher. She had never been in the classroom before in her life, and she walked in. She's like, this is what it looks like. She was an amazing teacher. I have another one that's doing online college, and she'll graduate with her bachelor's in the next month. I have we've done all these different ways. So the point is, you can homeschool. You get to pick what works best for your family. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't get wrapped up in the perfect curriculum and what do we need and what if we can't, it doesn't matter. All that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is if you're spending time with your kids, you're teaching them how to be resourceful. You're teaching them creativity and how to think outside the box. You're using your time that they're not studying and having to line up and be in school to do things that are valuable to them, things that spark their own interest, whether it's building a computer, whether it's learning how to cook, whatever it is. So the one thing I want to say to you homeschool moms, if you're thinking of going on this journey, is be courageous, go for it. As long as you put your children first and their education and value that, and you attempt to do it better, when you fail, because you will, you're going to blow it. There'll be years that I'm like, oh my word, we didn't even hit that curriculum. And that's okay, as long as it doesn't continue season after season. But if you can just be faithful with your kids, God will be honoring. He will take it to a whole new level. And I promise it'll be worth every ounce of energy, blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it. It will come back. You will reap what you sow. If there's one thing I know about homeschooling is what you pour into your kids or what you're going to get back. So if you pour love, truth, God's promises, and the unity of the family, you're going to get that back. So brave mom, go out and homeschool. You've got this, and it will be worth it. If you have more questions, comment, and I would love to answer because I know the value of homeschooling. All right, until next time.